What's good, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So I think pretty much the consensus pick right now for number one overall draft selection next year is Victor Wembanyama. I mean, the guy is an absolute unicorn. I mean, 7'2", but he moves about as well as you would expect a shooting guard or a small forward to. The guy has so much talent in the world out of France, and it's crazy to see how highly popularized in media, or how much media he experiences every single time he's on the floor. There's a lot of times where I see these young guys who get drafted pretty high and we don't know a lot about them from overseas. We don't see a lot of publicity from them. But Victor Wembanyama is being covered a ton, and there are so many people talking about him. He's pretty much, as I said, the consensus number one overall pick, and probably, if you go back the last few years, probably the most heavily excited for prospect that we've had for a long time. I mean, Chet Holmgren was very, very hyped up, and we don't unfortunately get to see how he's going to turn out just yet, but I do expect him to be pretty good. Cade Cunningham was, but not quite as much as Victor Wembanyama. And today, I want to go through. SB Nation put out this article a while back. I'm not exactly sure when it was, but they put out an article. So it was October 19th of this year. They put out an article talking about NBA teams that would have a chance to tank for Victor Wembanyama. Now, first off, they started with 12 teams. The first few teams are teams that would rather make the playoffs, so we're going to ignore that. Then you have teams that are developing, their young talent. They don't really have a lot of pressure to win, but they're probably not going to be as bad as they are expected to be in order to get the draft pick to get Victor Wembanyama. So those teams we're going to ignore. And for this video, I just want to focus on the final 5 teams, which are in their category titled the favorites to land Victor Wembanyama in the NBA draft. Now, these teams are not all going to be the same level of favoritism. Obviously, the season has started. This was before the season was in full swing, so you will get a little bit of a, like a pendulum. It kind of swings back and forth as we talk about different teams and as the NBA season goes forward. Unfortunately, we are going to have to begin with the Charlotte Hornets at that number 5 position. They basically give you the entire outlook of all these teams, but the Hornets have been bad for a few years now. They looked like they were on the verge of improving. Miles Bridges, his entire situation kind of, moved this team a couple years back. James Bouknight, a guy who, yes, he struggled last year, but this year he was expected to get some playing time. He gets in trouble. There's just a lot of bad stuff going on in Charlotte. Unfortunately for LaMelo Ball, looks like he's stuck, but it's not a lot of talent on that roster. Nick Richards is impressing. You've obviously got PJ Washington, who has a lot of room to improve now that Miles Bridges is out of the way, but I still think this Hornets team could definitely do with a guy like Victor Wembanyama, and thankfully for me, they're the closest team in the NBA to me, so I would very much like if they were going to, have the number 1 overall pick that they would like, or I would like them to select Victor Wembanyama. That would be just a very exciting thing. That would put a lot of butts in the seats for Charlotte, and really I think that would be the biggest reason. Unfortunately, they'll probably be a little bit too good, in my opinion, to get the number 1 overall pick, or at least have the highest odds to. You can be, as long as you're in the lottery, you technically have a chance, but I think the Hornets will probably be a little too good in order to get this selection, so I do think that number 5 spot suits them pretty well. Next up, we have the 4th spot, which is the Indiana Pacers. The Pacers obviously do not want to tank. They are wanting to compete the last few years. Not everything worked out, so instead they kind of hit a soft reboot. You get Benedict Mathurin, who has been playing like a amazing rookie. Has a very high chance, if he keeps this up, to play himself into the Rookie of the Year. Tyrese Halliburton, who I'm a huge fan of, is playing very good as well. They've got a lot of talent on their roster. Buddy Hield, Miles Turner, TJ McConnell is another name they mention on that roster. So Indiana's not quite a very a horrible roster until they offload some of those pieces like Buddy Hield, like Miles Turner, which they've probably been trying to do for the most part, but it just hasn't fallen through. As what is going on with my hair right there? That is interesting. I ain't never seen it do that, but Yeah, that's a weird one. But anyways, so the Pacers, obviously, as this article says, they have so much talent on their roster. It's going to be difficult for them to be that bad in order to have a very high chance to get the #1 overall pick. As much as it would be awesome to see Victor go to a small market team, which most of these rosters are, I think it's going to be difficult for them to get that far in the picks or get that high in the draft without having a bit of a luck of the draw or just making a big mid-season deadline trade that's going to get rid of their veteran guys. So I think the Pacers have a lower chance to do that. Next up, we have the Utah Jazz, a team that looks like they don't have a chance at all right now. The Jazz have been playing very well to start this season. I doubt it's going to keep up, but if they keep it up for even just a few weeks, it kind of seems like they might get too far ahead in the race to go after Victor Wembanyama. Obviously, you know, they would love a guy like Victor. Last 7-footer they had was not very good offensively. He could hardly move around on the court. So Rudy Gobert is gone. You've got a hole there. You need to replace it with something. Why not replace it with Victor Wembanyama? I do like that idea, him going to Utah, him kind of being the core of their rebuild. But as I said, they've still got a few good veterans, Jordan Clarkson, Mike Conley. They did trade away Bojan Bogdanovic. Colin Sexton, Lauri Markkanen, and Malik Beasley are a few young guys they have right now. And it kind of looks like they might play too well in order for the Jazz to get this selection, similar to what I said with the Indiana Pacers. And now we get into the final two teams they have in this top 5 for most potential to tank and get Victor Wembanyama. Now, one of these teams is very scary because they have a lot of draft picks and they just received Chet Holmgren, who is another, you know, very tall 7-foot guy who can move extremely well for his height. You know who I'm talking about. We all know who I'm talking about. The Oklahoma City Thunder have a very good chance to get a guy like Victor Wembanyama if they continue at the rate or at the pace that they are expected to lose at, because they're not only going to be bad, there's a very good chance that if, you know, they continue to do what they've done the last few years, shutting down their best players, unfortunately for OKC fans, unfortunately for us who want to see guys like Shea and guys like Josh Giddey play, they have a very good chance to be terrible if they do that. I hope they don't, because I want to see Shai Gilgeous-Alexander play something meaningful. But with Chet Holmgren out, you know, Shai already struggling with some injuries. Lou Dort and Josh Giddey are probably going to be their main guys going forward, and they don't really have any opportunities to make a play-in push or a playoff push. So it would probably be in their best interest to, you know, tank for Victor Wembanyama, give it one last shot at the final dance, the last dance, the final hoorah, whatever you want to call it, and try and get Victor Wembanyama. Obviously, that is not the best thing for butts in the seats, but next year you have a guy like Victor beside a guy like Chet Holmgren. That is a very big issue. Finally, we have the team that is supposed to be the worst in the league. That is the San Antonio Spurs, and it would just make sense, wouldn't it? They trade away DeJounte Murray. They try to hit the reboot button. You know, not a lot of proven talent on the roster. They've got other pieces that do look good, but nothing quite good enough to compete in the next few seasons. And we know how much the Spurs have always loved their foreign or overseas players. Victor's coming from France. Very big, you know, very big spot for them. They need to replace, you know, or need a guy there that can dominate that power forward center position alongside Jakob Poeltl at a different, you know, value, a different rate, because Jakob Poeltl is a very defensive-minded center. So Victor Wembanyama could be a very good piece for them alongside guys like Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson. I was about to say Deldon Johnson, kind of combining them together. And last time they used a pick on a very good, they've used a couple of picks on good big men, Tim Duncan, David Robinson. So they've proven that they can develop them. Victor Wembanyama, you know, he fits the mold, and I would be very interested to see this. It would be amazing if the Spurs got Victor Wembanyama. And if I had to choose my two favorite teams out of this list, would obviously be the Hornets, because I just support them by proxy. They are closest to me, so I do want to see them good. As even though I'm a Bucks fan, I still support the Hornets to an extent. On top of that, I would say the Spurs are my second favorite destination, just because they don't have a lot of talent. It's not like they would be creating some super team of youthful players like the Thunder would be, but that would still be cool. But the Spurs, it would just be such a great story if Popovich could get a guy like Victor Wembanyama to kind of revamp his roster that quickly. I think that would be a very, very inspiring and amazing storyline if that happened. And finally, the SB Nation closes off their article with a mystery team, and that is the New Orleans Pelicans with Zion Williamson. Obviously, they don't have a low enough pick, or they're not going to have a low enough pick to get that #1 overall draft spot, but they hold the Lakers' unprotected draft pick, and if the Lakers end up being bad this year, that is a very good lottery pick, or a very good spot to be in the lottery if you're a Pelicans fan. Don't think it's going to be quite that bad for the Lakers this season. I think they finally make that play-in appearance at minimum. So I think this one is a bit of a far stretch, but I can definitely see where they're coming from. What do you guys think about Victor Wembanyama? He is a very fun and impressive guy to watch play basketball. Which team would you like to see draft him? Go ahead and comment that down below. Please hit a like button and subscribe if you did enjoy the content. It helps me out. Also, help yourself out by turning on post notifications so you never miss an upload. Thank you all for watching, and I shall see you next time. Peace.